Well, the road to the ANC's 55th National Elective Conference is getting shorter. Between the 16th and the 20th of December, new leaders will be elected to determine the direction of the party. And at the helm of the governing party, they will also determine the direction of South Africa. The nominations by branches wrapped up earlier, and recently President Cyril Ramaphosa has received more nods from ANC structures, despite the Phala Phala scandal. The Veterans League has endorsed him for a second term, so has the Women's League's task team. To discuss, we're joined by Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who's a political analyst from the University of the Western Cape. Prof, thank you for being with us, as always. First, let's start with the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting over the weekend. And we only have speculation, we only have reports, nothing officially confirmed, but by all accounts, there was really a lot of opposition to the president this time around. And of course, it was a physical meeting, so possibly more robust. If the reports are true, how do you think it will affect him going into December?
No, thank you very much, Francis, for having me, and good afternoon to your listeners. No, honestly speaking, this NEC meeting was bound to have a different direction given the number of issues that have been happening. So it shouldn't come as a surprise, therefore, that some members of the NEC were vocal on certain issues, including the Phala Phala matter. Because this issue is not just important for the president, nor is it important for the ANC alone, but it is important for the country as a whole, because Cyril Ramaphosa is the sitting president. So whatever happens in the ANC will definitely have a direct or indirect impact on the country. So there are a number of things that, in fact, are a disappointment. I must say that emphatically. They are a disappointment in the sense that the president went to the Integrity Commission of the ANC, and then, of course, the reason was for him to present his side of the story and then leave it up to them to make their own determination. Ordinarily, you would have expected that the Integrity Commission would then present its own full report before the NEC, that is sitting before the actual conference taking place on the 16th to the 20th of December. But from what we are hearing and from what NEC member Nomvula Mokonyane was saying, there was no report tabled. The question is why? And the president strategically decided to infuse a certain section of the discussion in his political report, which was something that was not supposed to have happened, because he has a political report, but that political report space does not afford him an opportunity to present his side of the story on the Phala Phala matter. The Integrity Commission was supposed to do that, but they didn't do that. As to why that happened, only them can explain it.
Yeah, I've read reports that apparently a draft of the Integrity Committee's report was leaked, so that was the problem. And then he didn't have to respond, and then it leaves these calls and the reports that Lindiwe Sisulu, for example, asked him to step aside. We've had her on the show before, speaking to our political editor, and we heard her say if it was up to her, the president would step aside because of Phala Phala. There are too many questions. That would be fair. So now without the Integrity Committee's report, it just leaves everything hanging in the air. Do you agree?
Absolutely. We have been left hanging in the air from 2020, because that is when this incident happened. And you and I don't know for sure as to why we are still talking about this issue towards the end of 2022, because ordinarily this issue should have been dispensed of a long time ago. But that didn't happen. And then, of course, there have been calls, including the former heads of state, that is former President Thabo Mbeki, former President Jacob Zuma, and then former acting president, or not acting, but interim president, Kgalema Motlanthe, basically criticizing the sitting president on the Phala Phala matter and surrounding matters. Of course, that didn't go down well with some members of the ANC, including some leaders of the ANC. And then, of course, they were saying that the structures of the ANC should have been used to air those views, which in principle is correct, but I think it's double standards, because the same president accused his predecessor, former President Jacob Zuma, when he was addressing the meeting at Davos in Switzerland, and no one talked about the ANC structures at the time. So there are double standards there. So this time around, I think that there are more questions than answers, and I don't think that this is doing the president any good. nor is it doing the ANC any good. What would have worked would have been for the report to be tabled, deliberated upon, and then a decision be taken by the collective, that is the NEC, which is the decision-making body between conferences in the ANC.
All right, we wait. On the other hand, the president has been endorsed by the Women's League, the task team, and the Veterans League as well. I think the Youth League is going with Zweli Mkhize, but how powerful are those other two endorsements?
You know, Francis, for me, that is a joke, honestly, because at the moment, you don't have a stable Women's League. You don't have a stable ANC Youth League. You don't have a stable Veterans League. Then the question is, what is going wrong? Or what is going on? Whichever question you are comfortable with. And then, be that as it may, you then hear that the Women's League is giving the president a nod, and then the Veterans League is giving the president a nod. Even the interim structure of the Youth League, it's not all of them who supported Dr. Zweli Mkhize. According to the reports, Dr. Zweli Mkhize got 19 votes, and then the president got 17 votes, and then Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma got 4 votes. Then the question then becomes, are we nominating a person based on credentials, or is there something else that we are using as a yardstick? Because if we are assessing these leaders based on their performance, then of course we should be arriving at a different conclusion. But of course it's within their right to do so, and then only them know why they've decided in the manner they've done.
All right, final question for you. I mean, it seems like the presidency itself is hotting up that race again. But for a long time, the analysis was that it would be very interesting to see who was coming through, deputy president, that position, other positions in the ANC, as a funnel towards a future leader. Are there any interesting nominations for you? Joel Netshitenzi, the Veterans League, wants him for chair. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, among those named, anything that's really interesting for you to watch right now?
You know, Francis, I was talking to some of my colleagues in other spaces 2 months ago, saying that if the ANC wanted to redeem itself, they would have done itself a good service by bringing back Dr. Joel Netshitenzi. Not only because I've engaged Netshitenzi, not because I've co-authored with him, not because I've listened to him speak, but because I respect that gentleman. He knows the ANC's policies, and he can stand his ground without offending anyone. So as part of the renewal agenda, I would have loved Netshitenzi to be considered for the presidential position. Of course, Mlambo-Ngcuka, some might say, yeah, she still has the requisite skills and knowledge to lead the organization. But then, of course, some would say no. At some point, she was associated with other political parties, and therefore, her credibility has been questioned. So there will be a number of issues. But the reality of the matter is, as I'm sitting now, I cannot tell you that there is a sure candidate who can take this country forward. But the reality of the matter as well is that the incumbent president might come back, not because he's the best candidate, but because of other reasons. And then, of course, given that the structures we're just referring to have the right to nominate. And to answer our earlier question, they don't have too much power, but they do have a voice by virtue of the fact that they will have delegates. Branches are supposed to be having the loudest voice, given the number that they have.
All right, thank you so much for your analysis tonight, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, political analyst from the University of the Western Cape.